Good morning, everyone. Today is day 3 of the covidClassifyR Shiny app workshop. And today we're going to just review quickly what we learned about last week, which was how to perform QC of your data in the app. And just as I've done before, I've just popped the links to all of the previous sessions as well, in case I won't go over them because you have all done them, but that's just kind of a one-stop shop for all of the different session links. So today we're just going to go over just a recap of how to do the QC and how to download your process data and QC report. So I was hoping to get a bit of feedback from all of you. I kind of did this before, but I was just curious how many of you downloaded the example data and maybe practiced importing it to the app. Can you actually pop in the chat because I can't see you guys, or actually maybe I can. Let's see. Or maybe you can do a thumbs up if you have. Okay, Val, can I pick on you to tell us? No, okay, no, I won't. All right, thanks for doing it. Okay, Maria also says yes. Moyame, yes. Okay, great. So thanks for doing that. I hope that it went all right. I might pick on you later to give a bit of a just feedback. Did you also go through the quality control sections? Yes, from Val, yes, from Maria. Okay, thumbs up if it was all right, or no reaction if it was super difficult. All right, Val seems content. All right, and then the last question was, I know I gave you homework last time. By no means did I expect you to do it if you had so many other things, but did you also download the example output data of what it should have looked like if you went through the example data and downloaded them? Maybe that's a no. So we can go through that now, but essentially, if you did practice importing the raw data files and you kind of went through the application sections, and you actually downloaded the data, then there's also an example of what that downloaded data should look like, just for you to kind of cross-check and make sure that yours also looks the same. Okay, so to do the quality control recap, I am going to be picking on some of you today, so I hope you don't mind. Also, feel free to just type it in the chat. What do you expect your standard curves to look like? Does anybody remember from last week? And none of these questions are meant to be like trick questions.
We expected it to be linked.
Sorry, it was a bit hard to hear.
We expected the standard curves to be linear.
But not all the same for every single, like it could vary a bit, but generally have something within our closer to one thing.
Yes, I've also got a linear response from Val in the chat. So yes, all of you are correct. And yeah, we usually say kind of relatively linear because, as you said, it's slightly different. So this is what it would look like, what we went over last week. Some of them look very linear and some of them still have a bit of sort of an S shape or an kind of an L shape, or not an L, but like a half moon shape. Great. So that's excellent. What about the bead counts? Does anyone remember what we expect the bead counts to be to indicate a good run?
I think more than 50 is accepted, less than 50, it would give a red mark in the shiny up. Right?
Yes. Excellent. So yes, we did go through that last week. So in the case of the example, obviously I've given you a very nice example. Next week, we will go over some that maybe, you know, look more like real life. But yes, in the example data, all blue, all good. So that means that every well had at least 15 beads. What about the MFI for the blank samples? What do we usually expect them to be at to indicate a good run? You might not remember the exact value, and that's fine. But if anyone does, I will wait a couple more seconds.
I just remember living time.
All right,
The run will be
Was it
high or
100?
something, so
less than 100. Yes, whoever said that. Yes, that's correct. I mean, we usually would like it to be under 50, but yes, 100 is also considered okay. So this is the example data, and I didn't include, you know, this is real data from one of the MolHub runs, and the blanks for the S1 and S2 antigens are slightly higher than that 50 mark that we usually aim for, but they're, you know, that's where it's important to check that they're sort of consistently always around that, and generally less than 100. So this might, well, you might not remember the name of the model, but you might remember. So does anybody remember what kind of model we use to convert our data from MFI to the relative antibody units? If you don't remember the name, maybe you can describe it, or we can always just go over it again as well. Did we lose Maria and co? So the type of model that we use is called a 5-parameter logistic model. And, you know, as we discussed last week, really the important thing to know about that kind of model is that you're using it to fit your unknown sample data to the standard curve, but also taking into account that there's asymmetry, as we saw in the standard curves, and that there's often sort of an S shape. So that kind of model takes that into consideration. And when we do run the model results, they should begin to look a bit more linear than they did before. And I guess same as the standard curves, this is kind of relatively linear. It's never going to be perfect. I've just got a message from Maria that they dropped off. Just gonna see if they want us to wait for them to join. I think we might just keep going. So Val, given that you've gone through the app, what do you expect in your process data when you look at it in the app? And you can put it in the chat, or you can just choose not to answer. That's also fine. But what can we look at? Once it's processed, we get 2 values for each sample. So this is what it looks like when we put it in the, when we've processed it in the app. And for each sample and for each antigen, we get the MFI value, which is the raw reads that we got from the Luminex machine. And then we also have this converted relative antibody units. So we expect in the process data to have those two values for every antigen and for every sample. Shall we continue, Tama? You guys connected again? Yep, all right. All right, so any questions at that stage of the QC from anyone at all? Was there anything that was still unclear from last week's session? Feel free to pop it in the chat at any time. So the next thing we went over last week was how to actually download your data from the app once you've processed it. And this is basically the window or the image that you get when you click on the download tab. And there's 3 different buttons. So can anyone tell me what we download? I mean, it's a little bit obvious, but still. What do we download if we click on the download MFI-RU data? And did anybody actually get to this stage when they practiced it? Or did you just kind of look at it online and then keep going with your lives?
We managed to try together as a group last week.
Excellent. So when you download the MFI and RAU, you basically get a CSV file of what we just looked at in the processed data interactively in the app. You can also download it and then do whatever downstream visualizations or analyses that you need to do. So you will then download this MFI, so the MFI and the relative antibody units for every antigen and for every sample. So that's the first kind of output that you get. The next button is the standard curve data. And if we download this one, what do we get for the standard curves? Do we also get relative antibody units, just MFI? Or I guess if you didn't really get to the stage, you might not know. But this is essentially the file that you will be downloading. And here what you have is the sample. So you've got your 10 standard curve dilutions and the MFI values for every antigen. So you can then use, we discussed this a bit last week, you can use this data to look at the standard curves across all of the plates that you run from one study, for example, and check that they're remaining consistent throughout. You can also take a look at just the raw MFI values for each antigen if you want to understand a bit more of what the standard curves look like for your plate run. And then finally, you can also download the quality control report. And does anybody, I know we actually looked at an example of that last week. Does anybody remember what kinds of data or plots are included in this report? So basically all of the plots that you can look at interactively in the app will also be downloaded when you download the report. And then also the experiment info that you put into the import tab will also be printed in the quality control report. So this is just a screenshot of what the quality control report output looks like. So you've got your standard curve plot, model results, bead counts, the blank samples, and then the experiment info. And then we did talk about the experiment info last week, and we'll also include the Luminex plate information as well in this section so that you have a record of when the data was generated and then also when the process data was generated and when the quality control was performed. So that's a quick recap of last week, but I guess we'll stop to see if there's any questions from anyone. The next session is going to be the intro to the classification algorithm. So we'll be switching gears slightly. Was there any pressing questions from anyone at this stage? Or comments or feedback? Maria, are you guys connected again?